All right, let's dive right in. Today, we are tackling a mystery that probably feels a little too familiar. Why do we so often make financial decisions that, when we look back, make absolutely no sense at all?
I mean, come on. You know exactly what I'm talking about, right? That late night online shopping spree, the gadget you just had to have that's now just sitting in a drawer. We've all been there. It feels like a moment of temporary insanity, but what is really going on?
Well, here's the twist. The answer to this puzzle isn't about how much money you have, and it's not in some fancy budgeting app. Nope. The real reason is in your head. It's all about the weird, hidden wiring of our brains that is quietly pulling the strings on every single choice we make with our money. So, first up, let's really unpack this money mind mystery. We're going to explore that fascinating and sometimes frustrating gap between how we think we should behave with money and what we actually end up doing. You see, old school economics has this idea of the perfect rational investor. This person is like a robot, always logical, always making the absolute best choice to get the most gain. But then there's the rest of us, the real investors. We get swayed by gut feelings, by what everyone else is doing, by that scary headline we just read. We're human, and it's a lot messier. And this is where a really cool field called behavioral finance comes into the picture. It's the key that unlocks the whole thing. It basically mashes up psychology and finance to figure out what's really going on in our brains when we decide to click buy or panic and hit sell. Okay, so now let's pull back the curtain and get specific. It's time to meet the little mental gremlins that are behind all this irrational behavior, our cognitive biases. The best way to think about biases is that they're mental shortcuts, little cheat codes your brain uses to save time and energy. And most of the time, they're super helpful. But when you mix them with money, oh boy, they can send us completely off the rails. From thinking we know more than we do to just blindly following the crowd, these glitches are working behind the scenes all the time. Now, if you're going to remember just one of these biases, make it this one: loss aversion. This is a huge deal. It explains so much, like why we'll cling to a losing stock hoping it'll come back, or why some of us are just too scared to invest at all. It boils down to this: the fear of losing money is a way stronger feeling than the excitement of gaining the exact same amount. And you can see it right here, plain as day. Look at this chart. The bar for the joy of gaining $100 is here, but the bar for the pain of losing $100 is literally twice as tall. That emotional imbalance, that feeling where the sting of a loss is twice as powerful as the joy of a win, has a massive impact on how we act. Now, a close cousin to biases are things called heuristics. So if a bias is the tendency to mess up, a heuristic is the specific rule of thumb or mental shortcut that causes the mistake. A classic one is the availability heuristic. That's what happens when we jump on a hot stock just because we keep hearing about it everywhere. Our brain isn't looking at the big picture. It's just reacting to what's recent, loud, and easy to remember. But it's not just these clever mental shortcuts. Oh no, there's another, much more primal force at play here: raw, unfiltered emotion. Let's be honest, our financial decisions are almost never made with a perfectly clear head. Most of the time, they're driven by this potent cocktail of emotions. A little bit of fear, a dash of greed, a whole lot of what if I regret this, and sometimes a dangerous dose of pure euphoria. And here's the thing: each of these emotions pushes us toward a predictable and usually pretty damaging action. Fear screams at us to sell everything when the market dips. Greed whispers that we should go all in on some risky bet. The fear of regret can paralyze us, so we end up doing nothing at all. And that feeling of euphoria when things are going great, it can make us feel like a genius right before we make a huge mistake. Okay. So we've laid out all the ways our brains are basically wired to sabotage us. It's a little scary, right? But here's the good news. Now we get to talk about the solutions. How do we actually fight back against our own programming and build a smarter financial playbook? It really comes down to a clear, actionable game plan. Step one is just knowing yourself, figuring out what your personal triggers are. Then you outsmart your emotions by automating the good stuff, like regular savings or investments. You diversify so you're not putting all your emotional eggs in one basket. You zoom out and keep a long-term view, which helps you ignore the daily noise. And finally, hey, there's no shame in getting a second opinion from someone who isn't running on fear and greed. Look, here is the most important takeaway from all of this. You're never going to stop your brain from having these knee-jerk reactions. That's just how we're built. But by understanding that programming, you give yourself the power to hit the pause button, to take a breath, and to choose a smarter path. Seriously, awareness is your superpower here.
So I'll just leave you with this thought. Now that you're in on your brain's little secrets, which of its tricks are you going to focus on outsmarting first? Because knowing what you're up against, well, that's half the battle right there.